Hello everybody. We've got many of our customers wanting to upgrade to our Nintex Workflow Cloud engine, our powerful independent workflow engine and forms builder. Though we do have many customers who are on the Office 365 environment, and if they want to upgrade to NWC, they don't really want to go and start building all their workflows from scratch when they've put some effort into building them originally. Lucky for them, our development team has got an upgrade tool that we've been working on. So the purpose of this short video is to show you how that works. And you can see here that I'm in my Office 365 environment. I'm in a sample list. And you'll see your familiar Nintex Workflow and Forms buttons up the top there. So what we want to do before we start this process is to set up a few things. Office 365 needs to know where NWC is, and NWC needs to be able to share an API key with Office 365. I'm not going to be showing you how to do that in this session. I'm going to make the assumption that you've already set that up, but that is clearly documented in the help page, which I'll show you at the end of this video. Once you've done that though, you can then proceed to the workflow gallery by popping on this, and because I'm impatient, I've prepared one the night before. This here is the workflow gallery. The next thing that you want to do before even thinking about upgrading is to go ahead and check your connections page. So let's go over and have a look at that connections list. And as you can see here, that if you're not called Chris in this organization, then I don't know why you wouldn't be working here. So lots of Chris's have made different connections. You want to go through and replicate those connections inside Nintex Workflow Cloud. The reason for that is that they have different permissions. So for example, this is an admin one. This is relatively a standard one. Go ahead into Nintex Workflow Cloud, go and recreate those connections. We will not copy those connections over for you, and the main reason for that is security. We're not copying people's usernames and passwords over, or however this is actually stored on the back end. Once you have gone into Nintex Workflow Cloud, created those connections, you can then go back to the workflows page, and you will see here I've got 3 workflows associated with this list. And we have a status page. So what it's doing at the moment is actually just checking the latest and greatest of those workflows. But because I've had this page open before, it has looked at them, and these first 2 workflows, they are good to go immediately. This next workflow here though, this quote generation process test one, the system is telling us that we need to do a little bit more work. A review is needed. Now if I go and have a look at that, it'll tell me what the issue or issues are. So we will go and do that in a second. And then we've also got another column to say what's happening with the actual upgrade. Now I've tested this already, so that's why my one says in progress. In reality, I've actually gone and deleted the migrated workflow so I could show you this again. So yours will probably start off like this. It'll say not started. Okay, now if we go and have a look at the workflow itself, this is what's going on. We're generating a quote effectively. So the first thing we're doing is we're telling all the people that are interested that we are going to do that. We're doing some logging, and then for the customer, we're actually translating a few key statements using the Bing translation engine and generating their quote using our document generation technology with some of their translated statements. We will then go ahead and check in those items into Office 365, and we're doing another check to see, is the amount large? Is it more than $10,000? If it's not, we just log, but if it isn't, if it is, then what we'll go and do is just make sure that that we're able to generate a quote of that size. So we're going to get somebody to review that quote and say yay or nay. If they say nay, for this example, we're just going to stop the workflow, but if they say yay, then we will carry on and we will copy the document to the client folder using the copy document action. Okay, so that's the workflow summary. But remember how it said that this workflow needed to be reviewed. So if I go ahead and have a look at these 2 new buttons here, we've got upgrade details. So if I click on that, it'll tell me what I need to look at, and it's actually saying, hey, we don't really use we don't support that particular action inside Nintex Workflow Cloud. So therefore you, the workflow designer, will need to know how to deal with that. Now, using Nintex Workflow Cloud, what we can do is we can use a Nintex extension, or we can use another service that we do provide. But at the moment, we do not support Bing translation in Nintex Workflow Cloud. It's nice. It's the only one that I have to worry about. If there's more than one, then I will get a list. So we get this status page from here within the workflow, or we also get it if I click on the meatball menu. Same page will show if I click on upgrade details. Similarly, if I want to go ahead and upgrade that workflow right now, I hit the upgrade button from here or from here. So let's go ahead and do that. Click on that button. What it's going to do, ignore all this. This was me testing last time. I am going to hit the start button. And it's going to say, hey, this is going to create a new workflow in NWC because it knows that I've already done it once before. If you've never ever done it, if this is the first time, it's not going to prompt you for that. It's just going to say, yep, ready to migrate, let's go for it. So I'm going to say, yes, I am ready. And then in the background, what it is doing, it is copying those workflows over and the forms elements inside the tasks, and basically replicating each one of the actions as best it can. There are some actions that we're going to need to reconfigure, mainly the ones that use those connections that we'd made previously. But then there are other actions that do not have a one-to-one mapping. Where they don't have a one-to-one mapping, it'll give us a little bit of a summary saying what we need to do. So now it's saying it's doing that copy process at the moment, and then I can keep on hitting the refresh button, and you'll see here that we have successfully copied that workflow to Nintex Workflow Cloud. Let's go over and have a look at Nintex Workflow Cloud now, and I'll just refresh this page. Here we go. That workflow has just been copied over. So if I go and click through onto it, you'll see here a few things that we do need to go ahead and reconfigure ourselves where they wouldn't have had a one-to-one translation, but some really important things to note. So remember that Bing action was not supported in Nintex Workflow Cloud. We still bring over a placeholder element just to tell us, hey, you had something called XYZ action. It's not supported here, but this is a placeholder just to tell you where it was, because your workflow designer is going to have to do something about that. In my case, I'm just going to cheat a little bit and delete it. But you might have dragged in a different action altogether to replace it. Other items as well that I think are really important to note is this copy document action. Let's just go back to Office 365 for a second. That was one action inside 365. There is a specific SharePoint action. Inside Nintex Workflow Cloud, we don't have a direct copy document action itself. So what we've done is we have figured out the equivalent set of actions that would be necessary to replicate this one action. And in this case here, it's actually 3. We're querying the list to go and find that document, and then for every document that we find, we will then use the copy or move a file action. So there's actually 3, and what we do is we put all 3 inside an action set with the standard name that we would have used inside the 365 world. Now these ones here need to be reconfigured because we haven't copied over the connection details. Remember, we do that on purpose for security reasons. We will not ever copy over somebody's credentials. So I have to have set up the connection beforehand, and then it's simply a matter of reconfiguring it so it's using that connection, and then that actual action there is complete. Okay, to save time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and reconfigure these so that we get rid of the orange. I'll pause the video and come back when that's done. Welcome back. You can see that lots of the orange has disappeared now, except for this. Let's have a look what's going on here. Let's return back to Office 365. and have a look at this assign a task action. So I'll just go and open that up, and we'll open up the task form. Now inside the task form itself, what I have here is the classic list lookup. So just to prompt your memory, if you haven't played around with this for a while, if I go into SharePoint, I am able to look up information in other SharePoint lists, not necessarily the list that I've been working directly from. And that's exactly what we've got here with this cost center one. We're looking up another list called BOP cost centers and retrieving all the items, and the column that we want to display is title. We don't have a direct translation for that inside Nintex Workflow Cloud. However, we do have what we call our data sources lookup. So I need to go ahead into Nintex Workflow Cloud and create a data source lookup. Let me go ahead and do that. If I just go ahead and duplicate this tab, and we'll go over to and have a look at data sources. So I close this. Here we go. Data sources. I do have a data source called cost centers, and what it's doing is it's looking up SharePoint Online. The benefit of Nintex Workflow Cloud is we're not just playing in the SharePoint world anymore. So yes, I am going to be looking up a list that happens to live inside SharePoint Online. I could look up something from Salesforce, for example, or any other type of system that we can connect to. So what I do have to do is go and create a data source that looks up that SharePoint list. And then once I've done that, and let me just show you that, just in case you haven't seen data sources before. This is a slightly different help topic, but it paints the full picture. So you've got to give it a name. You've got to say what connection you're using. So I'm using my SharePoint Online connection. And then what list am I looking at, and what columns do I want to retrieve. Okay, so once I've done that, let's now go back into Nintex Workflow Cloud. We will go and reconfigure that task to use that data source. So let's go into design a form. All the form elements have been brought across as well, but this one here just needs to be reconfigured, and you can tell it that's how we've translated this form over. Okay, so it's saying, hey, we need to use this this data lookup control. So I need to go and reconfigure that. Cost centers. I don't need to do any other filtering on that particular cost center, because remember I'm bringing back everything in this case. And then say, what do I want to display? I just want to display the title, and I also want to save the title, where I could save the ID of it, but in this case here I'm just saving the title. Okay, cost centers is done. Then for the related list columns, what I need to do is go back to my start variables and bring them over as well. So one very important point to note is that we are working off a SharePoint list that has been either changed, so an item has been changed, or a new item is created. The way that we start that type of workflow inside Nintex Workflow Cloud is what we call our component workflow. So some other system is programmatically calling us, or in this case here we're looking for an event that's happened in some other system, and once that event is triggered, we start our workflow. We're not starting it with a form as such in this place. So in this case here I do need to go and reconfigure these fields to go and look at that original SharePoint item if I want to show that. Okay, so I need to go and reconfigure that. Let me go and pause the workflow again, go and do that to save a bit of time, and then resume. Welcome back. I've now created those variables and brought them over. One thing to note is that we will not bring over attachments per se from a SharePoint list. You'd need to go and retrieve those attachments using a workflow action. So in this form, this is kind of null and void for this particular instance. So I am going to go and delete that, apply my changes, and I'm pretty sure this workflow is good to go now. Okay, yes, no orange on there. Let's go back to 365 World for a second and close out of the screen. and go into the workflow gallery. Actually, I've probably got one open already. Yes, you'll notice that they will say in progress. Now I had that saying that before because I had been testing it, but if you are halfway through modifying a workflow, it'll say in progress. Now, this is very important. When you have multiple workflows, i.e. one in Office 365 and also one in Nintex Workflow Cloud, they will potentially conflict with each other. They might both be working on that same SharePoint list, but we have methods of dealing with that. So let's go back into Nintex Workflow Cloud. Let's go ahead and publish. And it's saying here, yep, this is the name of my workflow. This here is new. So what we can do is we can say, automatically deactivate the workflow in Nintex for Office 365. If I don't do that, I can still go ahead and publish this workflow, but you have to be aware that there are two workflows operating off the same list item. And then so you would have to manually go inside this one here and say either delete or deactivate. Okay, so you've got a few options available to you. Right, you can do it automatically from Nintex Workflow Cloud, or you don't have that item checked and you go and manage it yourself. Once that's done, the workflow should migrate over. So let's go ahead and do that. Sorry, too many windows open. Too many windows. Deactivate that workflow in Nintex for Office 365. Hit the publish button. I'll come back to you when that's done. Yes, I am happy. Let's go for it. Okay, so that workflow is all complete. Let's go back into 365 world. Let's go and refresh the screen. And you can see here that this workflow inside Office 365 has been deactivated, but it has been upgraded already. It still tells us that we needed to do some work, but we are good to go. So now when you run that workflow, or now when you create a new list item or whatever your trigger point is, the actual workflow that will run is the Nintex Workflow Cloud workflow, not the Office 365 workflow. The next thing that you need to know is our very comprehensive help file. This help file here tells you everything that you need to know about migrating from Office 365 to Nintex Workflow Cloud. I won't read this out for you, but you can pause your screen at the moment and have a look at that particular URL, or just go to help.nintex.com and do a keyword search for upgrade workflows to Nintex Workflow Cloud. And then you've got step-by-step guides about how to go through that migration process that I've just shown you in the video. Lots of frequently asked questions, and probably something that you want to know is, okay, what features in Office 365 work straight away in Nintex Workflow Cloud? Which ones do we need to do some work, and then which ones don't? So you will get all these different types of answers about which ones you can work with. So I do encourage you to go to that help page and have a very thorough read before you start your migration journey. I hope that helps. Please post any comments below, we'll get to them. Certainly use the Nintex community as well, where we've got people who are actively answering those types of questions. Nintex community is community.nintex.com. Thank you for your time.